There's a moment in every Leo's life when silence becomes louder than thunder. You don't see it coming. You think everything is fine. They're still polite. They still smile. Maybe they even say they forgive you. But something's different and you feel it even if you can't explain it. It's the silence of a heart that once burned for you and no longer does. What most people don't realize is this: hurting a Leo doesn't trigger an immediate explosion. It awakens something far more powerful, a cosmic recalibration. The universe begins to move slowly, silently on their behalf. Because when you wound a Leo, you don't just hurt a person, you disrespect royalty. You dim the light of someone who was placed in your life to help you shine. 2026 is not just another year for Leo. It is a threshold, a spiritual checkpoint where the universe begins collecting the debts of those who broke the trust of the lion-hearted. And the consequences, they don't show up in storms, they arrive in subtle echoes, in the relationships that no longer feel as alive, in the victories that suddenly feel hollow, in the loneliness that creeps in where their warmth used to be. You may think you moved on, but the truth is, when you hurt a Leo, you're the one who gets left behind. And 2026 is the year you finally notice what that silence cost you. This isn't just about astrology. It's about what happens when someone who gave you everything decides they no longer owe you anything at all. So if you've ever hurt a Leo or been hurt as one, this message is for you. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear is more than a warning. It's a map of consequences the universe has already started writing. Comment if this resonates with you. And now let's begin with the first consequence, the one that starts it all, the sacred flame of loyalty. Reason 1, the sacred flame of loyalty. There are two kinds of loyalty in this world. One that is convenient, conditional, temporary, dependent on benefit, and one that is eternal, fiery, unshakable, etched into bone and spirit. Leo belongs to the second kind. When a Leo chooses you, it's not a half-thought decision. It is a sacred vow, not spoken aloud, but deeply felt. They don't commit to everyone, but when they do, it's as if you've been chosen to sit beside the fire they carry in their chest. They become your shield in private and your voice in public. They'll defend your name when you're not in the room. They'll see your flaws and still protect your dignity. They'll pour their time, their energy, their heart into your world, not for approval, not for applause, but because it is who they are. This is the sacred flame. Once lit, it keeps you warm in ways you didn't even know you needed. But here's what most people forget. That same fire can vanish without warning when betrayed. When you lie to a Leo, cheat, mock their loyalty, or take it for granted, you do more than disappoint them. You desecrate something holy. You spit on the very altar they built for you inside their heart. And no fire, no matter how divine, keeps burning for someone who keeps throwing water on it. Leo doesn't always react immediately. There is no dramatic meltdown. There is no loud farewell. But there will be a moment, quiet, sharp, irreversible, when they realize, you were never standing beside me. You were standing beneath my warmth, taking it for granted. And in that moment, the flame goes out. They stop defending you. They stop explaining you to others. They stop trying to see the best in you. The fire that once protected you turns inward, and you are no longer part of its reach. That is the first and most devastating consequence of hurting a Leo. You lose a loyalty that was never yours to demand, a loyalty you didn't earn, but were blessed enough to receive. And the universe, it doesn't punish with vengeance. It teaches through reflection. You'll start to feel what it's like to stand in cold rooms surrounded by people who are present but never protect you the way Leo once did. People will nod at you but won't fight for you. You'll wonder why your name doesn't hold the same weight anymore, why your world feels colder. It's not coincidence. It's the echo of the warmth you lost. Because when Leo takes their loyalty back, it doesn't just hurt emotionally. It disorients the soul. You are no longer part of their pride. You've been exiled from a kingdom you didn't even know you lived in. And that kind of banishment, it doesn't come with noise. It comes with silence so loud you feel it in your chest at night when the world goes quiet and you realize they're not coming back. That's the beginning of karmic consequence. Not revenge, just the loss of something truly royal. Life lesson: never confuse Leo's loyalty with weakness. It is not given lightly, and once withdrawn, it cannot be summoned again, not with apologies, not with time. You can say sorry, you can try to prove you've changed, but the gate has closed and the flame has moved on to light someone else's life. Comment if you've ever felt the warmth of a Leo and what happened when it disappeared. Reason 2. When the lion goes silent, they say silence speaks louder than words. But with Leo, silence doesn't just speak, it rules. When a Leo stops talking, stops reacting, stops reaching out, it's not because they've stopped caring, it's because they've shifted into something ancient, something royal, something final. The silence of a Leo is not a pause. It is the moment the lion retreats into the golden shadows of its cave, not in weakness, but in power. Most people don't notice it right away. You think they're just taking space. You assume they'll come back. After all they always have. But this time there's a weight in the silence you can't explain. Their absence doesn't just feel like distance, it feels like exile. Because when a Leo goes silent, what they're really doing is reclaiming their light. They've realized that their energy was being wasted on someone who only came to warm themselves at the fire, not protect it. They've seen how many times they roared to defend you only to be met with betrayal or neglect. And now they're done. But Leo doesn't make declarations when they're done. They don't curse. They don't chase. They don't create drama. They vanish. Not physically, spiritually. And when their spirit pulls away, it's as if a sun has set inside your world and no new dawn is coming. You may still see them post online, you may still hear their voice in a room, but the soul connection, gone. They've sealed that part of themselves that once overflowed for you, and once sealed the lion does not return to beg. They do not reopen what has been closed by betrayal. You might try to get their attention, send a message, drop a comment, even apologize. But there is no response. Not because they hate you, but because they have returned to the kingdom of their own heart, a kingdom you no longer have the key to. And this is when karma begins to stir. Because that silence, it teaches. It teaches you what their voice used to sound like in your moments of weakness. It teaches you what their laughter used to heal inside you. It teaches you what it feels like when a king or queen no longer speaks your name. You'll hear echoes in places they used to stand beside you. You'll feel the ache of absence, not in loud ways, but in quiet ones, in victories they're no longer clapping for, in moments you used to share, now met with stillness. And the truth will land hard. Leo didn't walk away. They just stopped waiting for you to realize their worth. They gave you time. They gave you grace. But they will never give you the power to break their spirit twice. That is the power of Leo's silence. It is not a punishment. It is a boundary. And the universe respects boundaries forged in fire. Life lesson. If a Leo ever stops speaking to you, know this. You've entered the part of their story where you are no longer the hero. You're not even the villain. You're simply written out. And no amount of noise can bring you back into a narrative they've already closed. Have you ever been silenced by a Leo? Not with anger, but with grace. Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 3. You didn't lose a person, you lost the sun. Most people don't realize what they've lost until they feel the cold. Losing a Leo isn't like losing a friend or a lover. It's like watching the sun disappear from your sky. And at first, you don't even notice. The world still spins, you still breathe. But slowly, everything loses its color. You try to move forward, but the energy is different. The brightness in your life is dulled. Your days feel heavier. Laughter isn't as effortless. Victories don't taste the same. That's when it begins to dawn on you. You didn't just lose someone, you lost your sun. Because Leo doesn't love from the surface. They love from their core. Their presence radiates. They make the ordinary feel royal, the mundane feel golden. They give you confidence not by words, but by standing next to you. They amplify your light with theirs, and that's something no one else can duplicate. So when you betray that light, when you reject or diminish their love, you're not just rejecting a person, you're extinguishing the warmth that made you feel alive. And here's the part that karma never forgets. Leo doesn't take the sun away out of revenge. They remove it to survive. They pull back to protect the sacred. They disappear to preserve the part of themselves that you handled too carelessly. And once they're gone, there is no replacement. You'll search for someone who listens the way they did. Someone who looks at you like you're the center of the universe. Someone who pushes you to be bold, brave, more. But every person feels like a flickering lamp compared to the star you lost. And that's how the consequence begins. It's not punishment, it's realization. And realization is often more brutal than rage, because the moment you understand what you had is the exact moment you understand you'll never have it again. You'll sit with others but feel alone. You'll laugh but miss the sound of theirs echoing with yours. And late at night, you'll remember what it felt like to be seen so deeply, so fiercely, so honestly by the only person who could see your greatness before you did. That was Leo. That was your sun, and now you live in shadow. This isn't about revenge. This is about alignment. You rejected the source of warmth, and the universe responded the only way it knows how, by letting you feel the freeze. Life lesson. Never mistake Leo's love for ordinary. It is once in a lifetime. And if you lose it, you don't just lose affection. You lose a force that made everything around you grow. Have you ever felt the cold after losing a Leo comment, if this resonates with you? Reason 4. The mirror of the universe. The universe doesn't punish. It reflects. And when you hurt a Leo, it doesn't strike you with lightning or scream at your door. It simply holds up a mirror, a sacred mirror, and in it you begin to see the truth of what you've done. You see your own hands letting go of a love that held nothing back. You see your own words, sharp and careless, piercing someone who only ever wanted to lift you. You see your own silence when they needed your loyalty the most. But what stings the most isn't what you see, it's what you no longer feel. Because when a Leo walks away, their absence becomes a shadow that follows you, a void that no one else seems to fill. This is not coincidence. This is alignment. This is the law of the sacred mirror at work. The universe does not forget how you handled someone who was sent into your life with a royal heart. It does not ignore how you treated the one who gave you light freely. So it shows you, in moments, in patterns, in people. You'll meet those who reflect back your own detachment. You'll fall into connections where love feels conditional, where warmth feels withheld. And you'll wonder why things no longer flow like they once did. You'll remember Leo not in nostalgia, but in contrast. Because no one loves like they did. No one sees you like they did. And now everything feels dimmer. The mirror is not cruel. It is exact. It doesn't invent suffering. It reflects imbalance. If you poured doubt into someone's light, the mirror returns it. If you broke loyalty with lies, the mirror gives you relationships that fracture under pressure. If you walked away from a Leo's heart, the mirror surrounds you with people who never stay long enough to see yours. This isn't magic, it's mathematics of the soul. Energy always returns to its source. And what you send into a Leo's world, especially in 2026 when cosmic balance is magnified, will always circle back. Not as punishment, but as realization. And realization in this case comes slowly. It walks beside you for months, sometimes years, until you finally understand you weren't being punished, you were being shown. Life lesson. The universe doesn't need to avenge a Leo. It simply echoes what you gave louder, clearer, deeper. So give light, or prepare to live without it. Have you ever watched the universe reflect a choice you regretted? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 5. the exile from the circle. When a Leo lets you into their world, it's not a casual invitation. You're not just someone they care about. You become part of their circle, intimate, sacred, protected. To understand the magnitude of this, you have to understand what pride means to a Leo. It's not ego, it's family, it's soul recognition. It's the unspoken vow, I will stand by you as long as you honor this bond. This isn't a relationship based on convenience. It's tribal, spiritual, royal. And within that circle, a Leo gives you their all. They share not just time and words, but legacy, a sense that you belong to something powerful, something ancient. But betray that, break that trust, lie, diminish, disrespect, manipulate. You don't just fall out of favor, you are exiled. And exile from a Leo's circle is unlike any rejection you've known. It's quiet, permanent, and it leaves no trace of what you once were to them. You may still see them, they may smile, you might even hear them speak kindly of the past, but you are no longer inside. You've been spiritually removed from the fire pit around which their pride gathers. And no matter how hard you try, how loud you knock, how long you wait, the gates remain closed. Why? Because Leo doesn't just protect themselves, they protect the energy of the circle. And once someone is deemed a threat to that harmony, to that honor, they are cast out not in anger, but in duty. And that's when karma begins to whisper. At first you don't notice, you think you've moved on, but slowly the sense of belonging disappears from your life. People become more distant, loyalty fades, support feels shallow, no one defends you the way Leo did, no one stands up when your name is questioned. You miss the circle because it wasn't just about the Leo, it was the safety, the protection, the firelight of knowing someone had your back without question. You were part of a sacred pride, now you're on the outside looking in. And the longer you remain outside, the more you realize you didn't just lose a relationship, you lost a spiritual home. Life lesson. When Leo calls you family, believe them. And when they say nothing as they walk away, believe that even more. You were once inside their sacred circle, but exile is final, and no apology breaks the walls built in silence. Have you ever been removed from a Leo's circle, quietly, completely? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 6. The rise you never get to witness. When Leo gets hurt, they fall hard, not because they're weak, but because they gave something real, something wholehearted. And when that gift is shattered, it takes time to breathe again. You might think you've broken them. You might believe your betrayal ended their story, but you would be wrong. Leo doesn't stay broken. They grieve. They go silent. They disappear from your reach, but beneath that silence, something ancient begins to stir. A light flickers, a pulse returns, a fire reignites not for you, but for themselves. And then slowly but surely, they rise, not with noise, not with drama, but with power. They begin to reclaim themselves in ways that are breathtaking. They remember who they are, not who you told them to be, not who they became trying to earn your love, but who they were before the damage. And when they return to the world, they do so as something more radiant than before. But here's what you don't realize. You'll never see it. You'll never hear that laugh again, not in the way it used to ring for you. You'll never be part of their inside jokes, their plans, their late-night dreams. You won't feel their warmth when they walk into a room because you won't be in that room. You'll see glimpses from a distance, a photo, a post, a whisper from mutual friends. You'll hear that they're doing better than ever, that they're glowing, that they've met new people, that they've become unstoppable. And you'll smile, maybe even say you're happy for them. But inside a truth will burn. You are not part of their rise. You are a ghost in the chapter they had to burn to become who they are now. This is the final karmic consequence, not revenge, but exclusion. You were given a front row seat to a soul in its rawest, most loving form, and now the curtains have closed. You don't get to come back. You don't get to clap for them again. You don't get to rise with them. You had your chance. And you chose to break what was never meant to be broken. So now Leo walks into their destiny, and you watch from the shadows. That is the price. Not of hurting a Leo, but of believing they wouldn't rise without you. Life lesson. You cannot stop the sun from rising, but you can lose the privilege of standing in its warmth. Never hurt someone whose light was trying to heal you, because when they rise again, it will be without you in their sky. Have you ever watched a Leo rise without you, stronger, brighter than before? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 7. The roar you never heard. You expected them to scream, to fight, to throw your words back at you and demand to be understood, but they didn't. When you hurt the Leo, you thought their silence meant softness, that maybe your betrayal didn't hit as hard as you feared, that maybe they were used to pain. But what you didn't see was that Leo wasn't silent because they didn't feel. They were silent because they were protecting their roar. The roar of a Leo is sacred. It's not used for every argument. It's not wasted on those who don't deserve to hear it. It is reserved for truth, for justice, for the defense of something worthy. And by the time you hurt them, you had already stepped outside that circle. So, no, you never heard the roar. Not because it didn't come, but because it wasn't meant for you anymore. What you missed was the way they screamed in the mirror the night after you shattered their trust. What you never witnessed was the breakdown behind closed doors where they let the pain wreck them before they stood back up again. Leo felt everything, but they healed in silence. And when the roar finally came, it wasn't a cry for your return. It was a declaration to the universe. I remember who I am now, and I will never let someone like that close again. The roar you never heard, that's the one that rebuilt their world. It was the roar that turned their pain into power, the one that silenced the voice of self-doubt you planted, the one that declared, I rise now not for them but for me. And you'll hear rumors, you'll hear they're doing better, you'll hear that something changed, but you'll never hear the roar itself, because it wasn't yours to witness. It wasn't for you anymore. You burned your ticket to that moment the day you broke the lion's heart. And this is where karma completes another circle. You get silence, not as a gift, but as a reminder that some awakenings are too powerful for betrayers to witness. Life lesson. Leo's rage isn't loud, it's royal. And by the time they find their voice again, you're no longer invited to hear it. Have you ever seen a Leo rise in silence, then roar without looking back? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 8. The one who stood in the fire for you. Before you hurt them, they had already taken burns for you. Leo doesn't love in safe ways. They love with exposure, with risk, with raw vulnerability that says, if the world comes for you, it will have to go through me first. They've stood between you and your enemies. They've defended your name when no one else did. They've held your shame in their arms and called it strength waiting to bloom. They've walked beside you when everyone else disappeared. And sometimes they stood in front of you, shielding you from pain you didn't even see coming. Leo doesn't advertise their sacrifices. They don't keep a ledger. But make no mistake, they bled for you. And the tragedy, you didn't notice. You mistook their strength for invincibility. You thought their roar meant they couldn't be wounded. You assumed that because they always showed up, they always would. But no one can walk through fire forever, not even Leo. Eventually, they realized the flames weren't coming from outside. They were coming from you. The very person they defended had become the fire that burned them. You lied, or you pulled away when they needed you most, or you stayed silent when their name was on trial. And suddenly, the lion looked around and saw no one standing beside them, not even you. So they walked out of the fire, not because they stopped loving you, but because they finally started loving themselves more. And once they step away, they don't look back. You're left in the same flames they once shielded you from, only now they won't return to carry you out. That's when the consequences begin. You find yourself alone in situations where you once had a guardian. Your name is spoken in rooms where no one defends it. You look around during your lowest moment and realize the lion is gone. Not because they wanted to leave, but because you became the thing they needed protection from. Life lesson: never betray the one who stood in the fire for you, because once they walk away, you'll learn what it feels like to face the heat alone. Did a Leo ever protect you from the world? Until they had to protect themselves from you. Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 9. The light they gave you that you didn't value. Some people give love like water, quiet, necessary, unspoken. But Leo gives love like sunlight. You see it, you feel it, it warms everything around you. You didn't have to ask for it, you didn't have to earn it. It just showed up day after day, moment after moment. Their attention, their belief in you, the way they made you feel like you mattered. That light wasn't a performance. It wasn't calculated. It came from their soul. And maybe that was the problem. Because when something is always there, we start to believe it always will be. You got used to their praise, their encouragement, the way they smiled when you entered the room, the way they made you feel capable on days you wanted to give up. You didn't realize it was light until it disappeared. And once Leo takes their light back, everything changes. You look around and the world feels dimmer. The same compliments from others don't land the same. The laughter feels thinner. The victories feel quieter. Because it was their belief that amplified your own. It was their fire that made your path brighter. And now, you're walking in shadow. You try to recreate it, you try to replace it, but nothing works. Because Leo's light is not generic, it's golden, it's rare, and it shines from a place most people never reach. And here's where the karmic consequence lands hard. You begin to question your own light. Not because they took anything from you, but because their presence once made you believe in yourself more than you ever had. Now that mirror is gone, and what's left is the version of yourself you tried to forget. Not weaker, just less seen. And that's the cost. You didn't just lose their light, you lost the version of you that existed under its glow. Life lesson: when someone shines light into your darkness, don't close the blinds, because when the sun sets, it may not rise for you again. Have you ever felt the absence of someone's light after taking it for granted? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 10. The day they stopped rooting for you. There was a time when you couldn't fail in their eyes. You could fall apart, lose your way, make mistakes, and still Leo was there cheering louder than anyone. They celebrated your smallest wins as if they were world-changing. They believed in your potential, even when you couldn't see it. They lifted your name in rooms you never entered. Leo didn't just support you, they invested energy into your becoming. And they never asked for anything in return, only honesty, only respect, only effort. But then something shifted. You lied, or dismissed their support, or made them feel like their love was expected, not appreciated. And they felt it. That moment when their loyalty became a burden instead of a gift. They didn't argue. They didn't beg to be seen. They just stopped. They stopped sending encouragement at midnight. They stopped reposting your wins. They stopped asking how your dream was going. They stopped rooting for you. And you didn't notice at first, because the crowd was still there. But slowly, it began to feel hollow. The applause wasn't the same. The warmth faded. Because no one cheers like a Leo. No one claps with that much heart. And once they go silent, you realize that every voice since has been an echo, never the source. This is the turning point in karmic consequence. Not because Leo wants you to fail, but because the universe refuses to let someone pour fire into people who only offer ashes in return. Life lesson: be careful whose applause you take for granted. Because when Leo stops clapping for you, success no longer feels like home. Has a Leo ever stopped cheering for you and it changed everything? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 11. The love they gave without conditions. You didn't have to be perfect. You didn't have to prove anything. You just had to be yourself. And Leo loved you fully, freely, without keeping score. They didn't love you because of what you gave them. They loved you because they saw your soul and decided it was worthy of fire. They remembered the dates you forgot. They forgave things you never even apologized for. They stood by you even when you didn't stand by yourself. They gave without asking. They poured without emptying you. And they asked for only one thing. Don't make me regret giving you all of me. But you did. You ghosted them. You betrayed their trust. You disappeared when they were hurting and they didn't chase you. They just stopped and something holy closed. They didn't yell. They didn't rage. They just looked at you with eyes that no longer saw a future, only a lesson. And the worst part, you didn't feel the loss right away. It snuck up on you in quiet moments, in memories that refused to fade, in the way no one after them could ever love you the same way again. Because Leo's love wasn't perfect, but it was pure. And once you reject that kind of purity, life begins offering you connections that feel colder, more distant, transactional. You long for the warmth, but warmth only lives where respect does. Life lesson. The rarest kind of love is the one that doesn't ask to be earned. If you find it in a Leo, protect it like fire in the freezing dark. Have you ever lost someone who loved you purely and couldn't find that feeling again? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 12. The silence that doesn't mean peace. You thought the silence meant they were okay, that they'd moved on, that maybe, just maybe, they'd forgotten how you made them bleed. But Leo's silence isn't peace, it's precision. When they go quiet, it isn't because they have nothing to say, it's because what they have to say is no longer for you. This is the silence that holds 1,000 unspoken truths, the kind that doesn't demand closure because it has already buried the need for it. They don't ask you why. They don't ask you to explain, because they've already accepted the answer. You didn't value what was sacred, and now they are done offering sacred things to careless hands. You'll mistake their stillness for forgiveness. You'll think their grace means return is possible. But what you don't see is that their world has already begun again, and you are no longer a character in it. They may still wish you well, but from a distance, from a place where you can no longer reach them. And here's where karma becomes unmistakable. You'll crave conversations that no longer exist. You'll find yourself crafting apologies in your mind long after they've stopped needing to hear them. You'll speak their name in rooms that go quiet, and you'll finally understand their silence was never about reconciliation. It was about resurrection, and you are not part of the rebirth. Life lesson. Never mistake Leo's silence for surrender. It's not weakness. It's closure, and once it arrives, there is no doorway back. Have you ever been locked out by a Leo's silence forever? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 13. The door that closes quietly forever. Some endings explode. They scream, slam doors, cry on floors, but not with Leo. When they finally close the door, it's quiet. So quiet, in fact, you don't even hear the lock click. You think the silence is temporary. You tell yourself they're just processing. You assume they'll come back. They always do. Right. But days turn into weeks, weeks into months. And then reality sinks in. They're not coming back. Because Leo doesn't reopen what they've buried with grace. Once the decision is made, it's done. Not out of cruelty, but because reopening the door would mean betraying themselves. The same person who once let you into every room of their life now stands on the other side of a door you can't find anymore. You try to knock, but it's not there. They moved the whole house. And karma. It doesn't roar. It lets you hear the sound of your own voice echoing through empty halls. The apology that's too late. The longing that now has no place to land. This is when you understand what you did. You didn't just lose access. You lost the right to be remembered as something sacred. Because Leo doesn't need to hate you, they just need to heal. And healing for them means closing the door without ceremony, without return. Life lesson. Some doors don't slam. They whisper shut. And if a Leo closes theirs on you, you'll never hear that handle turn again. Has a Leo ever walked away so quietly you didn't realize it was forever? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 14. the loneliness you taught them to live with. Leo doesn't begin in loneliness, they begin in radiance, surrounded by love, drawn to connection, wired for loyalty. But every Leo eventually meets the one who teaches them a painful truth: how to live without being loved the way they love. That person was you. Maybe you didn't intend to. Maybe it wasn't all at once. But slowly, through silence, betrayal, emotional neglect, you taught the lion to live without your presence, and it broke them. Because Leo doesn't just give love, they build futures with it. They imagine you there at the center of it all. You weren't just someone they liked, you were someone they chose to give their light to. So when you pulled away, or when you stayed but dimmed their flame, they learned slowly and painfully how to live with absence. At first they fought it, they reached out, they tried to bridge the distance. But over time, something inside them shifted. They began to wake up and not look for your name. They began to succeed and not wish you were there to celebrate. They began to cry without imagining you holding them through it. And the silence you created became the new atmosphere they breathed in. That's the karmic tragedy. You taught them how to live without you, and now that they've mastered it, you're the one who feels the void. Because now when you laugh, they're not there to echo it. When you hurt, they don't feel it anymore. When you reach out, they don't reach back. The distance you created, it trained them. And once a Leo learns to survive without you, they never go back to needing what nearly destroyed them. Life lesson. If you abandon a Leo enough times, they'll stop calling it loneliness and start calling it peace. Have you ever taught someone how to live without you, only to realize they learned too well? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 15. The look in their eyes that never returns. You saw it once, maybe in a moment when you weren't even looking for it, but it was there in their eyes. That light, that warmth, that fierce, unshakable belief in you. It was the look of a Leo in love. And you didn't know how rare it was. You didn't know that not everyone gets to be seen like that, with full presence, with no judgment, with the kind of admiration that made you feel larger than life simply by being seen. Leo's eyes don't lie. They reflect what's in their heart. And for a while, their whole heart belonged to you. They looked at you like you were sacred, like they'd chosen you not just with affection but with soul. And then you broke it. Maybe it was a slow erosion, dismissiveness, disrespect, detachment. Or maybe it was sudden betrayal, lies, absence when they needed presence. But whatever it was, it changed the way they saw you. And now when they look at you, it's not the same. Something is gone, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. They still have light in their eyes, just not for you. And that's the part no one warns you about. You can lose the way someone looks at you, even if they stay, even if they smile, even if they forgive. Once that light dims, once that fire shifts, it doesn't come back. You'll try to recreate it. You'll wonder why the new connection doesn't shine as bright, why the laughter feels forced, why your reflection in their gaze no longer makes you feel whole. And it will hit you, not like a slap, but like a long silence. They don't look at me the same way anymore, because the Leo who once saw the best in you now sees the truth, not as punishment, as protection. They've redirected their fire, and you are no longer the flame's focus. That is your consequence, not the loss of a person, but the loss of being seen as rare. Life lesson. Some people only see you as extraordinary once. If you break that vision, you don't just lose the person, you lose the way they once made you feel alive. Comment CTR. Have you ever seen the light fade from someone's eyes and knew it would never return? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 15. The look in their eyes that never returns. You saw it once, maybe in a moment when you weren't even looking for it, but it was there in their eyes. That light, that warmth, that fierce, unshakable belief in you. It was the look of a Leo in love. And you didn't know how rare it was. You didn't know that not everyone gets to be seen like that, with full presence, with no judgment, with the kind of admiration that made you feel larger than life simply by being seen. Leo's eyes don't lie. They reflect what's in their heart, and for a while their whole heart belonged to you. They looked at you like you were sacred, like they'd chosen you not just with affection, but with soul. And then you broke it. Maybe it was a slow erosion, dismissiveness, disrespect, detachment, or maybe it was sudden betrayal, lies, absence, when they needed presence. But whatever it was, it changed the way they saw you. And now when they look at you, it's not the same. Something is gone, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. They still have light in their eyes, just not for you. And that's the part no one warns you about. You can lose the way someone looks at you, even if they stay, even if they smile, even if they forgive. Once that light dims, once that fire shifts, it doesn't come back. You'll try to recreate it. You'll wonder why the new connection doesn't shine as bright, why the laughter feels forced, why your reflection in their gaze no longer makes you feel whole. And it will hit you, not like a slap, but like a long silence. They don't look at me the same way anymore, because the Leo who once saw the best in you now sees the truth. Not as punishment, as protection. They have redirected their fire, and you are no longer the flame's focus. That is your consequence, not the loss of a person, but the loss of being seen as rare. Life lesson. Some people only see you as extraordinary once. If you break that vision, you don't just lose the person, you lose the way they once made you feel alive. Have you ever seen the light fade from someone's eyes and knew it would never return? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 16. The love story they never tell again. There was a time when they couldn't talk about you without smiling. You were woven into every story. You showed up in every sentence. Every memory was laced with your name like a secret blessing they weren't afraid to share. You were their inspiration, their muse, their proof that love could still be beautiful. And then one day, they stopped talking about you, not because they forgot, but because the story became sacred, too sacred to speak aloud anymore. Leo doesn't erase love. They don't pretend it didn't matter, but they protect what broke them. They fold that chapter of their life with the same hands that once held yours, and they place it in a place no one gets to touch. Not friends, not new lovers, not even themselves on most days. Because you became the love story they never tell again. Not out of hate, but out of evolution. What once was the most alive part of them is now part of their mythology, and like all great myths, it lives in silence. You'll notice it if you pay attention. When someone brings up your name, they pause. They change the subject. They smile in that faraway way people do when remembering a home that no longer exists. And you'll realize you were once the center of someone's universe, and now you are just a constellation they no longer trace. This is the karmic paradox. You may still speak of them, still tell stories, still reach for the past, but they've stopped saying your name, because to speak of you would mean reopening a page they've already sealed in gold. And Leo does not revisit what nearly consumed them. They rise above it silently. Life lesson. Some stories end not with a scream, but with a sacred silence. And when Leo stops telling yours, you're no longer part of their past. You're part of their becoming. Have you ever known your name still lives in someone's heart, but will never be spoken again? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 17. The crown they took back. There was a time when Leo handed you something sacred, their crown. Not literally, but in every way that matters. They lifted you up. They placed your needs above their own. They let you lead the story even when it meant dimming their fire just to let you shine. That wasn't weakness, it was devotion. Because when a Leo loves, they're not interested in being above you, they want to rise with you. So they bent, they adapted, they lowered their voice. They let your storm pass before they spoke of their own. They became quiet royalty, serving a love they believed would never betray them. But then, you crossed a line. Maybe it was one too many lies. Maybe it was one too many silences when they needed truth. Or maybe it was that moment you looked at them like they were ordinary. And something ancient snapped, not in rage, not in drama, in awareness. They saw the truth. I gave away my crown to someone who didn't even know what they were holding. And that's when Leo rises, not with fury, but with ceremony. They pick up their voice. They take up space again. They stop asking for permission to feel, to shine, to rule their own energy. They reclaim the throne that was never yours to sit on. And here's the consequence you didn't expect. You're no longer welcome in their kingdom. You'll see them glow not for you, but because of you. You'll hear them speak again, not to ask for forgiveness, but to remind the world who they've always been. You didn't just lose a person. You lost your place in a world that was built for both of you. And now, you stand at the gates watching royalty pass, knowing you were once their chosen. That's karma. You thought they needed your validation to wear the crown, but all along they were just letting you hold it for a while. Life lesson. When Leo reclaims their crown, they don't dethrone you in anger. They just remember who they are and refuse to be ruled by anyone who made them forget. Have you ever seen a Leo reclaim their power and no longer recognize who you are? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 18. The new light that no longer includes you. There comes a moment not with fire, not with noise, but with quiet certainty when Leo turns their face toward the future and you're no longer standing in the light. This is not revenge. This is revelation. They've walked through fire. They've shed the versions of themselves that tried too hard, loved too deeply, gave too much to those who gave too little. And now they rise into a new radiance. Wiser, softer in the right places, sharper where it matters. They shine, but not in your direction. That's the moment when it hits. You're not part of the vision anymore. You were once the reason behind their late-night dreams. You were once the image in their plans. But those plans have evolved, and you've been written out of the script. Not with bitterness, not with cruelty, but with clarity. Because Leo no longer asks, how can I bring them with me? They now ask, who deserves to meet the version of me I became without them? You'll see the light in photos, in stories, in whispers of their new life. But you won't feel it anymore. That warmth that once held your name in its glow has been redirected, not to replace you, but to protect them. And karma. Karma doesn't strike like lightning. It lingers in the realization that the future you thought you'd share is unfolding just fine without you. You don't get to enter that light again because you tried to dim it. And Leo never lets someone back in once they've learned to shine without them. Life lesson. Not everyone who witnesses your pain deserves to witness your healing. And when Leo heals, they illuminate a path you're no longer allowed to walk. Have you ever watched someone step into their light and knew it no longer had space for you? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 19. The strength they found in losing you. It's strange, isn't it? You thought they'd fall apart. You assumed that without you, they'd spiral, break, disappear into regret. But instead, they became unshakable. Because here's what no one tells you about Leo. When they lose something that cuts deep, they don't just heal, they evolve. The loss becomes fuel. The pain becomes purpose. The silence becomes strategy. And the person who once softened themselves to make space for you now stands taller than ever because of what they survived. You thought you'd be their undoing, but you were their turning point. And that's the karmic twist. You were the storm that revealed their foundation. You were the absence that forced them to fill their own void. You were the shadow that taught them how to protect their own light. And now, you're watching them become everything you said they couldn't be without needing your voice, your help, or your approval. They no longer question their worth. They no longer chase closure. They no longer wait for an apology that was never coming. Because in losing you, they found themselves. And here's what stings. You don't get to claim any part of that victory. You don't get to say, I always knew they had it in them, because you weren't part of the rise. You were the reason they had to rebuild. And Leo never forgets the fire they had to walk through alone. You'll see their name in places you didn't expect. You'll hear about their peace, their growth, their glow. But you won't be in the story. You'll just be the quiet lesson behind it. Life lesson. Sometimes the person who broke you is the reason you become unbreakable. But once Leo becomes that strong, they never go back to being small enough to fit beside you again. Have you ever lost someone only to watch them rise higher than you ever imagined? Comment if this resonates with you. Reason 20. The version of themselves you'll never meet. They were already magnificent when you met them, even if they didn't see it, even if they hid it behind self-doubt or softness, even if they let you speak louder just to make you feel strong. But deep inside, Leo has always carried a throne within, and after everything, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the silence, they finally remembered. Not all at once, but moment by moment. They began returning to themselves. They started waking up without checking for your name. They started creating without hoping you'd notice. They started loving themselves the way you never could. And then it happened. They stepped into a version of themselves that you'll never meet. Not because they're hiding, but because you lost access. That version. They laugh louder. They forgive deeper but from afar. They build empires in silence. They protect their peace with claws no one sees coming. They love again, but wiser, stronger, without illusions. And the you that exists in this new chapter is only a whisper, a memory tucked behind lessons learned and bridges burned. You might see glimpses in a photo, a passing conversation, a shared song, but you won't touch it. You won't stand beside it. You won't know what it's like to be loved by this version of Leo. Because that privilege expired the moment you treated their light like it would always wait. This is the final consequence, not punishment, not revenge. Just truth. They became everything you couldn't see, and now that they shine freely, you can only watch from the outside. Life lesson. If you mishandle someone in their becoming, you don't get to meet who they became. Leo rises once. If you weren't ready, they don't come back to see if you've changed. Do you believe there's a version of someone out there greater, freer that you'll never get to meet again? Comment if this resonates with you. Final conclusion. The sun doesn't rise twice for those who cast shadows. You thought this was about karma, about payback, about punishment for hurting a Leo. But now, after all 20 truths, you see it clearly. This was never about retribution. It was about remembrance. The remembrance of a soul who gave you everything and asked only to be seen. The remembrance of a heart that burned so brightly for you that it forgot to protect itself. The remembrance of someone who stood in the fire on your behalf and walked away with scars you never cared to name. And yet, they did not become bitter. They became royal. They remembered who they were. And once they did, the universe began to rearrange itself to protect that flame. What you feel now, the loss, the silence, the absence is not punishment. It is simply the echo of everything you never cherished when it was still within reach. You didn't just lose a person, you lost a son. And Leo doesn't go backward. They don't reopen closed gates. They don't lower their crown to make someone more comfortable. They move forward with grace, with fire, with the kind of strength that comes from remembering they were never meant to dim for anyone. In 2026, the universe is not punishing you. It is simply honoring the contract Leo made with their soul. If they do not choose my light, I will become so bright they'll never touch it again. Final life lesson. There are people you only get one chance with, not because they're unforgiving, but because their love is sacred. And if you break sacred things, you don't get to keep the blessing that came with them. The sun rose for you once. You chose to cast shadows. It will never rise for you again. Which reason hit your heart the hardest? What did Leo teach you about loss, about strength, about yourself? Comment below. And if this journey spoke to your soul, subscribe to stay close to the fire. This is not the end, it's just the beginning of remembering your own light.